This is ACC Nation with Will Ojanen and Jim Quist, featuring ACC sports news and interviews. Available on streaming radio, podcast, and YouTube. Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ojanen. I'm Jim Quist, and our special guest is the publisher of BCEagleInsider, the host of Locked On BC podcast, AJ Black. AJ, welcome. Glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here, guys. It's week 2 of football, and we got a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do, and we're going to start. Before we started with the podcast, it started firing things up here. We started getting a real feel for where this may be going. We'll keep ourselves contained as much as possible. We'll put a leash on Will, because that's the guy we got to watch out for. So AJ, simple. What the hell's going on? I mean, what is going on with Jeff Hafley and Boston College?
That's $1 million question, Jim.
Give us $1 million answer, bud. I mean,
well, you had you go into this season, you're feeling pretty good. You finally got your offensive line situation fixed, feeling like that was the big issue last year that caused all sorts of problems for Boston College. They couldn't block, and that all just kind of spiraled into the defense and being on the field too long. And you figured, get that fixed. You got the same quarterback that was having success at the end of last year. You went out there, you addressed depth issues in the transfer portal. You brought in 10 new guys. You got a couple new freshmen that are looking pretty promising. You're feeling good going into the season. And then they go out and they lay an epic turd against NIU. And that first half of that game was embarrassing. I don't blame the defense, because the defense let up 7 points. And against NIU, you'd be happy, against any squad, you let up 7 points, it's pretty good. But the offense was a complete disaster. And the way that it was handled, the way that it went in that first half is all on the coaching staff, because all offseason, Jeff Hafley has been talking about Emmett Morehead. He let Phil Dracovic go to Pitt and said that he did it because Emmett Morehead was going to be the future of this program. Mm-hmm. He sent him to ACC Media Day because he's the face of the program. And then he pulls him after 2 series. He threw 5 passes, and he looked jittery and nervous, but he didn't get any chance to course correct. He just yanked him and put in Thomas Castellanos, who, the first half too was not very good. And he figured things out and he was better, but the way that he did Morehead was dirty. I was not a fan of what he did there, because they had been trotting him out to the media all summer long. I got to know Emmett Morehead. He's always there for press. When you named him starter just a week ago, you put all your faith in him, and then you yank the rug out from underneath him. Now what's Morehead going to be like? You hope your guys are stronger than that. But if he's quarterback 1 this week, which I don't know, Hafley said he has it, but he's not going to tell the media who it's going to be. What kind of faith is he going to have in himself? It's got to be shot. You made a couple bad passes and they yanked you for that. After all of this hoopla, and that happens. And then the offense is a mess. The defense is out there for 37 minutes, and you have BC's first loss to a MAC program. It was, I don't know.
Well, to say something, NIU in the past has been a pretty decent program. So, they weren't.
Yeah, but they're 3-9 last year.
Yeah, well, and they weren't expected to be that much to deal with this year.
Right.
But that's one of those teams that sometimes will surprise you. But you mentioned before we got on that you had Jeff Hafley as a guest on your show. And about a month and a half ago, you said something like that?
Yeah, I want to say middle of July. He was on my show.
All right. And now it's what has changed? Is there something inherently different with Hafley, or is this who he is?
He hasn't changed himself. Like you talk to him, he's the same guy that he was when they were hired with the whole get in thing. And he's a personable guy. He's super nice. It's hard to say, to be tough on him, but you have to, right? You see the product on the field, you see what happened with Moorhead. I have to call a spade here, right? And so for me, for Hafley, like what worries me is that nicety could be a weakness. I wonder sometimes if being too nice comes across as not strong enough when you're on a football field, right? And you just look at like how he delegates his power, right? So he fired John McNulty, which he had to have done after last year. The offensive coordinator's gone. Tem Lokabu leaves. He goes to the NFL. Instead of hiring, well, first of all, instead of hiring someone new for some new blood in there, he just hired a bunch of his friends again on both ends. He just promoted from within on the defensive line, and he promoted from within on the offensive side of things. Didn't bring in any new blood, and he co-coordinated both of them. So it's like, I don't know. I one of the biggest things I thought about all summer was too many chefs in the kitchen. I mean, especially when you look at the defense and you have Hafley throwing his thoughts into everything. So you have like three guys doing everything there, and you have two on the offense. And I wonder if that, like, the inability to like make tough decisions might be the things that's biting him in the butt right now.
He also sounds like a micromanager to me. Hey, we're going to do things just a little differently on this podcast than we have in the past. In that sometimes Will and I will switch back and forth, but sure. Based on everything that's going on here, I know Will's got a lot of questions. So, Will, I'm just going to tell you that at any moment, feel free to jump in, because I know as AJ is explaining stuff, it's prompting you to, questions that you may have that you want to take a little further with some of the things that he's telling us.
Okay, so I actually want to spin a positive for just a second, because I feel like this sounds like it's been a good therapy session so far, but I gotta ask, where does that fourth down pass by Castellanos rank in terms of craziest plays you've seen?
That play was nuts. That was like something I saw someone refer to that as like, you could only do that in Tecmo Super Bowl, the old Nintendo game. Like yes. What he did there, and like he ran backwards, like 40 yards, and still like going backwards. He's back there and he shook, an NIU defender out of his feet and was able to complete that pass. That was special. And truth be told, Thomas Castellanos may be the shining light left. Like, he showed a lot, and he wasn't perfect. I mean, that interception was awful. But my co-host Mitch Wolf was saying that I think he completed like 47% passes, but on Pro Football Focus, if you do the adjusted pass rating, where you take out the drops, which were asinine that game, they dropped 6 passes, seemed like 12. His passer percentage went up to 67%. So he had a good game. It was just everyone around him was just making mistakes. So yeah, that play was cool. Lots of like flashbacks to Tyler Murphy watching him at times, from 2014. But I'm curious to see who Hafley puts in as QB this week, or if he puts in both, because he also said, then again, my brain gets going, that he might put in both, and that would be, no, don't do that. Just pick a freaking quarterback and go with it.
I see a similar situation in Blacksburg at Virginia Tech, where they're playing 2 quarterbacks, and I just think it doesn't make any sense. And I think in 99% of instances, unless you're Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, it's not going to work.
Right.
We talked about the issues with the O-line last year. Everybody was injured. I think you were asked to play at one point. How did they perform on Saturday?
They were very good. And that was another frustrating part. They started the game off by running the ball, doing some power running, and they were good. Yeah, Pat Garwo was, running at like 4 or 5 yards a clip. And then when they, Moorhead, and there was a few penalties, there was a few pre-snap penalties that were things that, put stalled out drives. They were, Christian Mahogany looked good. I thought Trapilo and Kendall and what's his name, Kyle Hergel looked good, but again, Hergel also got a personal foul for doing something. So there were mistakes there, but like the pressure rate dropped drastically from last year. They were able to run the ball. The passers had all the time in the world if they wanted to throw it. But you had to one of the things we were wondering is, like, with Moorhead, when he was out there, is his internal clock so screwed up from last year that he hasn't been able to fix it, because he looked very skittish back there. And I wonder if that skittishness seemed to like almost mimic what he did last year when he was running for his life all the time.
So let me address a rumor, since Will brought it up, talking about you filling in on the offensive line last year. Are you the reason that Jurkovec left the team?
Yeah. You can blame me for it. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I thought he was going to be such a star for BC, and it's not. I mean, like, the guy just got snake bit everywhere, right? So he got that stupid injury against UMass that year. That year was 2021. If he doesn't get hurt there, BC wins 8 games. I mean, they won 6, I think, with Grosel. They would have won 8. And then we wouldn't be talking about Jeff Hafley right now, and all this stuff, because they would have had a successful season. You win 8 games at BC, you're golden for a couple of years. But they win 6. It's the same as Steve Adazio. It's the same as everything that's been going on. No improvement. And Jurkovec's now in Pitt, and he's looking good.
You're telling me that if they'd won 8 games, no, I don't even want to go there. Anyway, let's talk about this next game. Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Holy Cross is the number 5 FCS team in the country. They were 12-1 last year. They only lost to South Dakota State in the FCS tournament, who went on to win the entire. South Dakota State went on to win the whole thing. They have who I call the FCS version of Luke Kuechly. They had this guy. What's his name? I totally blanking on his name, but no one's gonna know it. Jordan Dingle or something like that. Had 21 tackles last week, and they got a good quarterback that's mobile. They've got a running back that ran for 4 touchdowns last week against Merrimack. This is like their Super Bowl. Now, BC smacked them in 2018 with Steve Adazio. They won 62-14. Holy Cross couldn't tackle AJ Dillon. Like, he ran like 4 times for like 160 yards. But they're a much better team. Bob Chesney, their head coach, who a lot of BC fans are watching for reasons you can probably guess, is a local guy who has done a great job of taking small Catholic schools and revitalizing them. And Holy Cross is a good team. They beat Buffalo last year. They've I think 2 straight years they've beaten FBS teams. And if BC goes out there as flat as they did against NIU, they're going to lose. They need to show, and Hafley hasn't shown it yet that he can do this, that they're the superior team. Like, if you we're going to dig in here, right? Hafley's been there since 2020. He's played Texas State, UMass, UConn, Rutgers. You name it. Either he's lost to them or he's made it close. The UMass game was close. The Texas State game, they should have lost. They have never put a team away since he's been heck. Maine last year, the Maine was in it until like the 4th quarter. So this is worrisome to me. Things could get very bad for Boston College if they lose this game. They just have to fix the mistakes I think they made last week. But with the way things have been going over the last 4 years, they might. It's like the girl with the dike, putting her finger in the dike, where one hole they stop and then another one pops out, and it's like that's what it feels like right now. Like, yeah, maybe they won't drop any passes, but something else is going to be a problem, and then that's a concern, because Holy Cross is gunning. This is a historical rivalry that's gone back to 1896. BC hasn't played them a lot recently, but you go back in their history, these two teams have played a lot. And Holy Cross doesn't forget that kind of stuff. So I mean, I don't know. There's no gambling lines because it's an FCS team, but I'm not feeling good about this game right now.
Payback's hell too for 2018. Will?
Yep.
Yep. So I think, yeah, I don't know if you said the name, but Jacob Dobbs is the person you were talking
Dobbs, that's
about
it.
for Holy Cross. Yep.
Yep.
And this is a team. I think you talk about with Holy Cross, they're a team that runs the ball pretty well. And we saw BC do a decent job of stopping NIU. And I
Mm-hmm.
know some of that was just because they were on the field so much because the offense just couldn't sustain consistent drives. But this was a defense. I think this is the thing. Can they hold a team that runs the ball so well like Holy Cross?
They just gotta get off the field. They did fine. I mean, they let up a couple plays against NIU, but it was the self-inflicted mistakes that just kept biting them. Like, the personal fouls, defensive pass interference. But you know, NIU ran the ball like 40 times for 150 yards. I think they only averaged like 3.3 yards per carry or something like that. I mean, that's what you want. Like, they weren't doing anything and they only had a few big plays. It was just that BC's offense just kept putting the defense back like they did last year, the entire year. So you got to hope that the offense can stay on the field, sustain drives, not make mistakes. If they could do that, then the defense will be fine. I don't know if they can do that.
Mhm. And you kind of brought up the self-inflicted wounds, and this is a team, Boston College. They've been pretty good at limiting those. Especially last year. I think they were middle of the pack in terms of penalties per game, but they didn't
45th.
commit
Yep.
a lot of they didn't commit a lot of these personal foul penalties, and
Yep.
I think they committed 10 penalties, and I know for sure 3 of them were defensively that led to first downs and killed them. This is
Yep.
something that they've got to fix.
Yeah. And Hafley said that as much this week. He said, this is stuff that, you know, we have to control. Like, Donovan Azaraku can't smack the quarterback in the face after a play. Yeah, he flopped, but like, you can't give him that. You have to pull up, and you got to be more careful on some of these. They're going to play tight on, in some of this man coverage that they're doing, but on third and fourth down, you have to be careful. You can't just give them free downs. And that's what they kept doing over and over again. And those mistakes are fixable. They are fixable, but will they be able to fix them?
So here's another interesting question. If they're not going to generate a big pass rush against NIU, how are they going to do this in an ACC play?
I think it was more the NIU scheme. Like, they schemed against BC's pass rush. So I think Mitch, my guy, is like into stats, and sometimes he says stuff and my eyes glaze over. I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but he did tell me that there's like a statistic out there where there's actual there's passes where like they design it so that they just get the ball out of their hands so fast that no pass rush will ever get to them. I think it's like after 3 seconds, that's considered a standard pass attempt. So they take out all those like quick flips that they were doing, and NIU only passed the ball 11 times. Like, they only like actually threw it 11 times. And BC got pressure, I think, around 33% of those plays. It's still not great, but I think it's a bad example. Like, it's like a small data point. I think we need to see more. And when they play more consistent passing teams, that's not Florida State, I think we'll get to see what this line can do. Because I don't think I just don't think they did what they were selling out so hard against the run, because that's all NIU was doing, that there was no pass attempts for them really to go after, other than a few kind of just like gimmicky things that weren't things you could rush.
I kind of deal with PFF stats with a dose of salt sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep. They are what they are. They're a standard, and some of it doesn't make any sense. Even the people who are,
my guy Mitch is big. He's like, he went to like scouting school and all that stuff. So when I talk to him, that's his cup of tea. I am much more into the nuts and bolts and things, and he loves all the other moving parts
the gadgets.
Like, he comes up with stats. Like all these things, like, I'm just learning from him.
Well, not a bad thing. I mean, everything adds up one way or the other. Hey, right. If we get to a point where I hate to even go this route, but let's say we know we lost the NIU game.
Mm-hmm.
Lose the Holy Cross game. Things are not going to look much better after that. At what point, if there is such a point, is the trigger pulled on him?
So if you were to ask me a couple of years ago if BC would pull the trigger in the middle of a season, I'd say they wouldn't do it. Like, just knowing how their system has been, I've seen so many bad coaches come in and they make it through the end of the year and they're given their chance to exit. But we saw it with Jim Christian. They fired him in the middle of the year because he was doing awful. Yep. I have heard going into the season from some of my sources that Hafley was, anyone watching knows he was on the hot seat heading into the season, right? Yeah. That this was a make or break season for him. I don't think anyone that I've talked to expected them to go out there and lose to NIU and potentially Holy Cross. Like, it just doesn't seem like it's possible. So could he make it? Could he not make it to the end of the season? I think that's a potential. I think there's a big potential. Like I just see the horror show, the way how bad this could get next couple of weeks, right? So just imagine, like, they go out there, they lose to Holy Cross. That's the first BC FCS loss in like 40 years or something like that. That, again, new low. That would be a new low point. And then who knows? Florida State is going to pummel them if they play the way that they've been playing. So you'd be 0-3 with like 3 just horrendous losses on your resume. I would think there's a potential that he gets the Jeff Collins treatment from last year, and then like Rob Jasinski or Azar Abdul-Rahim gets to just coach out the year and they figure things out at the end of the year. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being really pessimistic, and then they go out there and they smack Holy Cross this weekend, but I don't know.
Stranger things have occurred.
Yep.
So this is a transition, a couple of questions. So if that does happen, here's the one thing I really want to know. You're in a unique position as somebody who graduated from BC, that you've also got some of that fan perspective as well. But what are the fans talking about? The supporters, the alumni, what are they saying about this whole thing?
The Boo Birds were out the first half hard. I know the students are pretty upset right now. I can't imagine. I went there with Matt Ryan and Jared Dudley, and I saw winning, and that kind of just built me to who I am now. But I can't imagine for the last like 10 years, 15 years of some of these fans that have gone through, like, students and like asked to be like a fan as an alumni. Like, who wants to like to watch a team lose over and over again, right? Yeah. So I've heard everything from they're going to wear paper bags in their heads to this game to they're not going to show up. That Holy Cross is going to pack Alumni Stadium. I don't know. I feel like the fans are really down right now. They're really angry. You go to my message board. My gosh, I write things and no one comments on it because they don't like. Hafley says he doesn't know who's quarterbacking. Nothing. Then you go to like, how does BC fix this? That someone created, and there's like 400 comments. They're revved up right now, and I think everyone that I've talked to and all the people that that follow the program are I think they're looking for a light at the end of the tunnel on this.
All right, let's get into this is the question I really didn't want to go to so much, mainly because it sort of offends me. Nonetheless, it's out there, and it is one of those things that I think tends to make people a little bit defensive, maybe a lot defensive. So if it does, take it with a grain of salt here that it's not coming from me from that standpoint.
You can't offend me. Go ahead.
All right.
I've heard everything.
I bet I can. But, because we're covering the entirety of the conference, we hear and see all of the comments in regard to, let's get rid of this school, that school, and BC's one of them. And I keep thinking to myself, this is a conference. There are people in this conference. There's a reason they're in this conference. Sometimes teams have off years or a set of off years until they can find their way. Now, that being said, um, you know, with all this realignment nonsense, there was some, yeah, I read some of your stuff and it felt to me like, ooh, this could have a serious impact on Boston College. Talk to us a little bit about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, when the realignment stuff was happening and like the future of the ACC as a conference seemed to be up in the air with the what was it, the Magnificent Seven or whatever that was, all threatening to leave. I was worried about where BC would end up at the end of that, right? Like, I can't see the Big Ten or the Big 12 or the SEC they're not going to go after a school like Boston College, right? So what happens to them now that like we're starting to see kind of maybe where this is going, even with Florida State and Clemson and maybe a school or two more leaving, adding in SMU, adding in Cal, and adding in Stanford solidifies the conference more. These schools like NC State, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Duke, they're not going to get all these two mega conferences are not going to gobble up all these schools. From what I've heard, the media rights deals are going to limit how many schools you can bring in because Fox and ESPN are kind of like, whoa, we don't have the money right now to like, they're cutting things all over the place. Right.
That's right.
So I don't see right now, what I don't see is the ACC completely imploding. I do see potentially Clemson and Florida State leaving, and that seems inevitable almost. But I think BC, I see a lot of fans saying that, and I don't care what the fans say. They, people that, like seeing like NC State fans complaining about BC. It's like, yeah, well, BC's won more, gotten more ACC championships than you have in the last like 20 years. So calm yourself. And we just beat you last year and our team was garbage. So like, I see a lot of fans talking a lot, but like, I don't know. Boston's a good market. I think BC's done a good job of they got a good NIL program finally coming in. They just opened a fantastic basketball facility just today. Football, I think they just need they just need to have the right coach. I thought Hafley was going to be it. Maybe he figures this out in the next couple of weeks. If he doesn't, you go down the next road and you got to hit this next hire.
Yeah. Will?
Quick, just want to step outside of BC for a second. And let me just ask you this. We saw Clemson just get, pretty well handled, even though they did have some luck go against them with fumbles, but they don't look like Clemson, AJ. What do you do? Are they on the tail end of things now?
Just as someone who I cover recruiting for 247, I know that Clemson just hit like 2 home runs at wide receiver. I think they got the top wide receiver in the country coming next year. That was a big issue, but getting a new offensive coordinator with the old players there, I feel like they, I think Dabo is going to kind of start thinking about this transfer portal piece because, even Hafley went out and grabbed 10 guys because he needed it. Like, you can't be that pigheadish about getting new guys in to fix what you need. Look at what Notre Dame did. They got Sam Hartman to fix a major issue. There were great wide receivers out there that Clemson could have put with Cade Klubnik. They didn't do it because Dabo's the way he is. And you know what? He's won national championships, but he's struggled the last couple of years. Maybe, this is a big moment for him. Does he adjust the way he does things, or does he continue just trucking along the way he's done it? But Clemson, that kind of loss and the way Florida State's playing, Clemson looks like they get at least 2 losses right there because I don't see them beating the Seminoles.
Speaking of FSU, do you think they're, it's a 1-game sample size, but do you think they're a playoff team?
Yep. They look great. They look like a playoff team. Like, credit to Mike Norvell. Like, they waited it out. He's done a fantastic job of navigating not only recruiting, but transfer portals to really build a playoff level roster. They've got guys that are from their school, like Jordan Travis, but they've also, Keon Coleman and Jared Verse, they've hit the transfer portal and they bring in stars too. They look like the Florida State teams that Bobby Bowden used to have, that were in, early Jimbo Fisher type stuff. That's, I think, ready to take that next step and get them back on the map. It's been a long time, but it looks like they're there.
So my man is going to be headed toward Boston here soon, and I know he's going to ask some detail here after the program about great places to eat and things to see, et cetera, et cetera. If there were one place specifically in Boston that you would recommend to him to go eat, it's a must-do, or a place to see that's a must-do, what would you say?
So it's so funny. I just had my sister-in-law's wedding was last week, and I had to miss the beat. Like you talk about fall weddings, right? The first weekend of the football season, and there's a wedding I can't get out of. But the groom had never been to Boston before, so we were talking about, like, where do you have to go? You have to go to the North End. North End of Boston is the Italian area of Boston. Like, find any of those restaurants. They're amazing, like great Italian food. It's a cool area to just kind of walk around too. It's like very like small city-ish. It almost reminds me of Italy. And then once you're done that, like, stuff your face there, and then either go to Mike's Pastries or Modern. They're like the two rival pastry places, and get a cannoli. I'm a big Mike's person, but it's a very heated rivalry there. Some people want the others. Go to Mike's. The line's kind of big, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. So Mike's Pastry, North End.
Sounds to me like you have a penchant for Italian food, my man.
Anytime I get to Boston that I want to, like, go out with my wife and we have time, or like get together with friends, the North End's always the place to go.
There we go. Sounds good. Hey, we're hoping that there are solutions that are coming down the road, and maybe Hafley and his staff can find their way through this. And if not, then some quick solutions on the part of the AD, the school, to move forward and to get Boston College back in the groove. But we really appreciate the fact that you stop by and give us a little perspective on what's going on. I know it's frustrating at this moment, and it will only last a short period of time, and it depends on your perspective on short period, of course, but nonetheless. The publisher of BC Eagle Insider and the host of Locked On BC podcast is our friend AJ Black. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.